I always thought that marriage was about partnership. You know, two people building something together. Not always perfect, not always easy, but fair. Like stacking bricks. Your turn, my turn, slowly raising a wall that shelters both of us. That's what I believed. But here I am, sitting in this beige office with motivational posters on the walls and a bowl of stale mints on the table, wondering how many bricks I laid alone while she was busy throwing them at my head. We ended up in therapy because I asked for it. I was the one who brought it up, during one of those cold, dead-eyed dinners where the only sound was the clink of cutlery and her sighs. I told her I missed us, that we didn't talk anymore, that I felt like I was living with a stranger who happened to have my last name. She rolled her eyes and said, "Fine, let's go. Maybe hearing it from someone else will finally get through that thick skull of yours." So no, it wasn't a mutual decision. It wasn't two people trying to fix something. It was me, reaching out, and her, already packing the lighter fluid. "Tom," says the therapist, her voice soft, practiced, "how are you feeling about what Laura just shared?" How am I feeling? Let's rewind 5 seconds. Laura had just crossed her legs like she was on a talk show, looked me dead in the eye, and said, with a smile, "I think Tom's always struggled with insecurity. Maybe if he weren't so modestly equipped, he'd feel more like a man." She even held her fingers a few inches apart, like she was describing a baby carrot. Silence followed. Heavy. The therapist blinked, mouth slightly open, as if her brain had buffer lag. I just stared at the floor. I couldn't move, couldn't breathe, because that was the moment I realized I wasn't in a marriage anymore. I was in a public execution, and my wife had just pulled the lever. "Tom?" the therapist repeated gently. "Do you want to respond?" I swallowed hard. My throat was dry as ash. "No," I said quietly. "I think I've heard enough." Laura snorted. "Oh, come on. Don't be dramatic. You always do this. Act like the victim." "No," I repeated, looking up at her. "I just didn't know we came here for stand-up comedy night." That landed. The therapist shifted in her seat. Laura rolled her eyes. "It's called honesty. That's what therapy is for, right? Honesty. You want me to lie and say everything's amazing in the bedroom when it's not?" I clenched my jaw. My ears were ringing. I wasn't even embarrassed. I was humiliated. Not because of what she said, but because she wanted me to hurt. This wasn't a slip. This wasn't frustration. This was calculated, and she was enjoying it. "Thanks," I said finally. That was very enlightening. The rest of the session was a blur. Words floated in the room like dust motes. Communication, emotional distance, shared goals. I nodded when I had to. I smiled when expected. But inside, something broke, and something else started growing in its place. The second session, I showed up alone. Laura was too busy, which was her new way of saying she didn't feel like pretending. The third session, she arrived 10 minutes late and brought a cold brew with extra whipped cream like it was a casual brunch. No apology, no urgency. The fourth session, that one stuck with me. It started like the others. The therapist trying to balance neutrality with gentle prodding, me trying to pretend I wasn't counting the cracks in the ceiling just to avoid looking at my wife and Laura. Well, Laura was glowing. Not glowing like she was happy. Glowing like someone who knew she had the upper hand and loved every second of it. "Let's talk about intimacy," the therapist said carefully. Laura scoffed. "Do we have to?" That little chuckle, the dismissive smirk, like the very topic was beneath her. "It's part of the work," the therapist said. "It's important to understand where the disconnection started." Laura leaned back in her chair, crossing one leg over the other. "Okay, sure," she said, waving her hand. "Let's talk about it. Look, Tom's always had self-esteem issues. That's not new." I felt my spine tighten. "Laura," the therapist cautioned, but she kept going. "And honestly," she shrugged, "his self-esteem problems aren't because of me. They're because of his size." Silence. Pure, raw silence. I felt it in my gut like a punch. My eyes didn't move. My body didn't move. But my brain, oh, it was screaming. She said it with a casual cruelty that only comes from someone who knows exactly where your deepest wound is and presses it anyway. The therapist blinked slowly. That's a very sensitive comment, Laura. Can you clarify what you mean by, oh, come on, she cut in. Everyone's thinking it. It's the elephant in the room. Or, well, the lack of an elephant. She laughed at her own joke. Even the therapist looked stunned. And me? I stared at the carpet. Same damn carpet with the same wine-colored stains in the corner. I counted to 5, then 10. Then I looked up. Thanks for the insight, I said, voice even. You really nailed the spirit of this whole therapy thing. Laura rolled her eyes. You asked for honesty. No, I said. I asked for help. You brought a guillotine. The therapist gently intervened. Let's pause for a moment. Tom, how did that comment make you feel? How did it make me feel? Like a boy again. Like that one day in middle school when a girl read aloud a note someone wrote about my size, and I spent the rest of the year avoiding eye contact with every human being in the building. But this wasn't middle school. This was my wife. The woman I built a life with. The woman who just emasculated me in front of a stranger and called it therapy. I'm good, I said flatly. Really good. In fact, I think I've seen everything I need to see. Laura tilted her head, smug. Oh, here we go? Gonna storm off? Throw a tantrum? No, I said. I'm gonna think, quietly, which I know is foreign territory for you. That hit her. Her smile faltered, for just a moment. The therapist called for a break. I stepped outside. The air was cold, crisp. Something inside me had shifted. No more begging, no more hoping. It was time to verify some things. After that session, I stopped arguing. Not out of defeat, but because something had finally clicked. You don't reason with someone who enjoys watching you drown. You swim the hell out, quietly, calmly, and you make sure they can't follow. At home, I became a ghost in my own house. I smiled when needed. I asked about the kids' homework. I cooked dinner once or twice, just to keep the illusion going. Laura didn't notice the difference. She thought she'd broken me, but in truth, she'd freed me. One night, after the kids were asleep, I sat in the garage with the door half open, letting the cool air hit my face. I stared at the ceiling for an hour, maybe 2, thinking about everything I'd ignored, everything I'd swallowed, every time she flirted too long at parties, every mysterious girls' weekend that didn't smell like perfume. It reeked of lies. And then I remembered something else. Our youngest, James, 6 years old. The timing never added up. We weren't even sleeping together much then, and when she told me she was pregnant, she acted almost surprised, like it wasn't planned, like she hadn't expected it either. And suddenly, I needed to know. Not out of revenge, but clarity. I needed truth. Cold, sharp, undeniable truth. I ordered the test online, one of those discreet kits. Swab, seal, ship. Easy, efficient. I waited 3 weeks. 3 very long, very polite weeks, where I kissed my son goodnight, folded laundry, and made small talk with the woman who had gutted me in front of a therapist, and then asked for more wine. When the results arrived, I didn't even open them right away. I waited until the house was quiet. I sat at the same kitchen table where we celebrated birthdays, lit candles, made plans. I turned on the soft overhead light. I poured a glass of water. And then I opened the envelope. Probability of paternity? 0.00%. There it was. Not rage, not sorrow, just silence. I stared at the words for a long time. They didn't blur. They didn't scream. They just existed, like a knife that had already been in my chest for years, and I was only now noticing the blood. James, my boy, not my blood. I didn't hate him. God, no. He was still my son in every way that mattered. But Laura? Laura had burned it all down and left me to inhale the smoke. I got up, walked into our bedroom. She was half asleep, phone still in hand, blue light casting shadows across her face. She looked at me briefly, then turned over without a word. I stood there for a moment, just looking. Then I walked away. Not just from the room, but from the version of me that ever thought she was worthy of my silence. I wish I could say I cried, that I broke down in some noble cinematic way. But no. After reading the result, 0.00%, I just shut off. Like a machine switching to backup power. Minimal emotion, maximum function. And somewhere in that quiet space, a thought came creeping in. If one child isn't mine, what about the other? It was a horrifying question. Not because I doubted her again, but because now I couldn't afford not to. My daughter, Ella. 8 years old, bright, sarcastic, too smart for her own good. We built Lego castles together. She called me Papa Bear. She once told me she wanted to marry someone like me when she grew up. But taller, she added, giggling. I ordered the second test the next day. That wait was worse. I watched her like a stranger, analyzing her smile, her laugh, the way she held a pencil. I hated myself for it. But I needed truth. I couldn't rebuild anything until I knew where the ground even was. 3 weeks. When the envelope arrived, I locked myself in the same quiet kitchen and opened it with trembling fingers. Probability of paternity, 99.9998%. She was mine. I exhaled for the first time in what felt like a year. A tidal wave of tension left my body. I put the paper down, covered my face, and cried. Not because of grief, but because something had survived. Something real. Ella was mine, and for her sake, for both kids, I was going to do this clean. I spent the next week being polite. Overly polite. Good morning. How was work? Don't forget to charge your phone, honey. Laura didn't suspect a thing. Why would she? I was playing the role she'd assigned me long ago, the quiet, manageable husband. But while she texted in the bathroom, giggled over wine with co-workers, and posted selfies from yoga class with suspiciously filtered captions, I was working. I dug into her cloud backup. Passwords she once shared in trust were still saved in my head. I opened her synced chat archives, dating back 3 years, and I read everything. The names didn't surprise me, the words did. He's like a puppy, sweet, harmless, and kind of pointless. If only he knew how boring he is in bed. Honestly, I stayed for the mortgage and the health insurance. At least you don't make me fake it. Some messages included pictures, not of her body, of her contempt. Her eyes smirking at the camera while lying next to men who weren't me. I saved everything. Screenshots, timestamps, folders labeled with calm, legalistic names. I consulted a divorce lawyer, explained everything, except I left emotion at the door. She deserved no tears, only precision. And then I made a decision. The final session at therapy was already scheduled. I'd show her the same mercy she showed me. None. The final therapy session was scheduled for a Thursday. I took the day off work. Not because I needed time to prepare, I already had everything in place, but because I didn't want anything else on my mind. No distractions, no meetings, just one clean final conversation. It wasn't even about closure anymore. It was about clarity. I arrived 10 minutes early, took the same seat I always did, near the window, facing the wall with the ugly forest painting. The therapist nodded politely, unaware that this would be her last time seeing us as a couple. Laura walked in 5 minutes late, as usual. Just her, casual, calm, confident. She smiled like someone clocking into a shift she no longer respected. "Hey babe," she said lightly as she sat down next to me. "You look serious. You okay?" I turned and smiled. A slow, deliberate one. "I'm great," I said. The therapist opened her folder. "So, how have things been this week?" I waited a moment. "You know what?" I said, reaching into my coat pocket. Actually, I brought something. I placed 2 sealed envelopes on the table in front of me. Cream-colored, clean, heavy. Laura raised an eyebrow. What's that? Truth, I said simply. You always said therapy should be about honesty, right? The therapist looked confused but curious. I slid one envelope toward her. This one's for you, I said to the therapist. It's a summary, timeline, notes, screenshots, transcripts. She hesitated, then opened it. Her face changed within seconds. Laura shifted in her seat. What the hell is this? Your messages, I replied. With Adam, with Brian, with Marcus. That one's impressive, by the way. 3 different cities in a month. Really committed to cardio, huh? Laura's face turned pale. Her mouth opened, but no sound came. These weren't just affairs, I continued. They were campaigns. Against me. Against this marriage. You didn't cheat to escape something. You cheated because you enjoyed belittling the man you came home to. Tom, she started. No, I cut her off. Calm. Measured. You had your sessions. You used them to humiliate me, to chip away at what little dignity you hadn't already drained. I just nodded, hoping there was something left to fix. This is insane, she snapped. You went through my private messages? Oh, now privacy matters? I leaned forward slightly. You mocked my body in front of a therapist, Laura. In front of a stranger. You reduced me to a punchline and expected me to fetch you coffee the next morning. The therapist looked visibly uncomfortable, holding the papers in her lap like they were radioactive. What's in the other envelope? Laura asked, her voice tight. I pushed it across the table. Results. DNA. Her eyes widened. You tested our kids? I tested my kids, I said. One of them isn't mine. One of them is. Both are loved. She gasped. A quiet, sharp breath. The kind people take when they realize gravity has failed. You had no right. I had every right, I said, finally raising my voice, but only slightly. You lost the right to my trust the moment you made my anatomy a joke to deflect your guilt? Silence. Laura stared down at the envelope like it was ticking. What do you want, Tom? She whispered. Revenge? I shook my head slowly. No, I said. Just freedom. You'll get the divorce papers tomorrow. My lawyer has everything. I'm not fighting for the house. You can have it. But Ella stays with me part of the week. She is mine, after all. Tears started welling in her eyes. You can't just walk away. Laura, I interrupted, standing up. You already did, months ago. You just forgot to tell your body. I turned to the therapist, gave a respectful nod. Thank you for your time. Sorry you had to witness all this. And then I left. No screaming, no dramatic music. Just the sound of a door closing behind me. It's been a year since I walked out of that therapist's office. 12 months. 365 nights without someone next to me. And I've slept better than ever. I live in a smaller place now. 2 bedrooms, creaky floors, a back porch with chipped paint, and a wind chime I never bothered to take down. But it feels like mine. Not ours, not borrowed, not shared with someone who saw me as background noise. Mine. Ella spends half the week with me. She still calls me Papa Bear. We eat too much pizza. We burn pancakes every Saturday morning and pretend they're gourmet. She never asks questions about the divorce anymore. She just knows that here, she's safe. That here, no one yells. No one lies. No one cries in locked bathrooms with the fan on. As for James, he's not biologically mine, no, but I see him sometimes. Birthdays, school events. He hugs me like he means it. I don't blame him. He's innocent in all this. I hope he grows up strong, kind, nothing like her. Laura tried briefly to play the victim, to twist the narrative. She told friends I'd gone cold, that I'd snapped. But screenshots speak louder than sob stories. And when the truth came out, when people saw what she wrote, what she said, the sympathy dried up fast. Last I heard, she's dating a gym trainer. The irony writes itself. But here's what really matters. I am no longer angry. That surprised me honestly. I thought I'd carry the bitterness like a coat I couldn't take off. But it faded. Not all at once. Slowly, like fog lifting after a storm. I've started playing guitar again, reading before bed. I've gone back to hiking on weekends, breathing in air without tasting resentment. I don't check her social media. I don't replay the sessions in my head. I don't wake up wondering if I was enough. Because now I know I was. I just gave everything to someone who couldn't recognize value unless it came with a spotlight and applause. She mocked my body to feel powerful. She twisted therapy into theater. But in the end, she showed the world who she really was. And I didn't even have to raise my voice. If there's one thing I've learned through all this, it's that dignity isn't loud. It doesn't slam doors. It doesn't scream. It simply walks away, with its head held high. And now, so do I.